Good day everyone. Now we will have our module number 4 for fourth quarter, which is all about observing correct grammar in making definitions. So it's somehow connected to a definition or expanded definition that we had last video lesson. So we will start on page number 2 rather. So our objectives for today: identify the parts and patterns of a definition, apply specific grammatical pattern in making definition, and use the guidelines appropriately in making definitions of words. So later, we will identify what are the patterns to be used in grammatically correct definition sentence. And before that, we will answer what I know. So it is okay if you find difficulty in answering this, because later we will compare your answer here or your scores here to your scores later after the discussion. If there is some improvement based on what you didn't know before the discussion and what you gained after. So it's A, B, C, D, and for the second part, it is matching type. So you will get what is the continuation of the definition here in column A. Then you will find the continuation in column B. So for example, respiration is the process. What do you think is the continuation of that? Is it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, or J? J is missing, so we have a K here. So for what's in, define the words by describing the illustrations. Incomplete sentence, write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. So you can have even one sentence as long as you really define or illustrate what is in the picture. So we have 5 pictures here. So even one sentence, as long as it's clear and it's really understandable. And for what's new, read the speech I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr. Then answer the questions that follow. So we have here, it was delivered August 28, 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial, Washington, D.C. So after reading that, it's quite long, but give time in reading that. And the answer will be, we have here 3 illustrations. So it talks about freedom and unity. In the first illustration, we have Freedom Station. The speech begins and ends by emphasizing freedom. What does King mean by freedom? And in what sense does he regard African Americans as still not free? Use examples from the text and your knowledge of the era to defend your answer. So you will define what freedom means to the author and why did he say that African Americans are not still free. Then for the Justice Station, the speech then moves to speak about justice. Can you say what he means by justice? Equality of rights, equality before the law, equality of opportunity, equality of economic and social condition, or something else. Use example from the text and your knowledge of the era to defend your answer. So you will also define what justice means based from the terminologies cited here: equality of rights, equality before the law, up until the social condition. And lastly, we have the Brotherhood or Sisterhood Station. In recounting his dream of the future, King speaks not only of freedom and justice, but also of brotherhood and sisterhood. First, what does King mean by brotherhood or sisterhood? How is this related to the other goals such as freedom and justice? Is this goal of brotherhood rooted in the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Or is it rooted in the Christian messianic vision, when the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together? So, based on what you have read, is brotherhood or sisterhood really attaining the goals of liberty and or freedom and justice? Is it rooted from Christianity or American values? So you will always base your answer on what you have read. So we will have now the discussion proper, observing correct grammar in making definitions. So definition discusses about giving clarity to the meanings and symbolisms of words. Technically, definition can be grouped into two: a literal definition, which is all about the dictionary meaning of words, and B, technical definition, which deals with how words are used. Thus, its meaning can be different from other aspects of thought. So like what we have discussed, I think it's module number 2 of 4th quarter about the technical and operational. So definitions are a core part of any dictionary. Writing basic definitions requires skills, practice, and sometimes help. So in making sentences which will give definition of a particular term, we are always following a particular or specific pattern to make it more precise and understandable. Therefore, following correct grammar in writing definitions is important. A poor choice of words may lead to understanding and dull communication. So listed below are the pointers on how to write correct definition. So the first one, we have 5 guidelines in writing a definition. The first one will be just the dictionary facts. A definition does not need to contain every piece of information known about a subject. Rather, it should contain information about the word, what the word refers to, and enough explanation to allow a user to distinguish the word from most other words. So in making definition, you should always emphasize how significant that word, how different that word from the other words. Example, his messianic vision, which means relating to the Messiah, is very provoking. So here we can see that the messianic vision, it is relating to the Messiah, meaning it defined what messianic vision is and how it is. However, in the good example, his messianic vision, which is inspired by his belief that it will be the correct way, is very provoking. So here, it is not only said that the messianic vision is centralized about Messiah only, but it is about the inspiration and the motivation he brought to people. So don't include usage notes in a definition. If additional clarification is needed to separate a term from other words with a similar meaning, the usage notes can be added. So here we have a very evident examples. Not good example, dollar, formal, buck, informal may have the same meaning. Here we can really see that it's still understandable, however, it doesn't use correct grammar. If you will compare dollar, which is the formal word, and buck, which is an informal word, may have the same meaning. Here, we can see that it is stated from a formal way. Also here, instead of using parentheses, you can use phrases. So to keep it simple, write the simple grammatical structures rather than complicated ones. Limit the use of dependent clauses and phrases, whether set off by commas or parenthetical. If many such additional modifications are needed in a definition, then that definition probably needs a thorough rewrite. Here, keep it simple because the first goal of making definition is to give information. Therefore, if you will have a definition sentence, it should be clear, it should be simple. Therefore, it will make understandable text. And always consider the proper use of commas or any other punctuation because it will drive the reader about the real definition of what is being described or what is being defined in a text. So here, place key terms and short explanations near the start of the definition. If a definition requires qualifications and modifying phrases, then try to place those near the end of definition after the main point has been made. So you will arrange your words inside the sentences based on what is the connection between them. For example, the term and the main definition, you should put them together and do not put any words that you want to add in the sentence but it is not the major or it's just a minor information. You should always put those sentences or ideas at the end, but make sure that you will place the main definition to the given term. Avoid showing off with deep words and get to the point. Padding an entry with superfluous verbiage may sound impressive but does not the purpose of a definition. It is stated here that we should always use words which is really understandable of all the readers, because we cannot expect that all readers will be understanding deep words where they will look at dictionary, they will search it first before you understand the definition. Remember, they will read your definition to understand things and not to search for more. So we have example here. A centrifuge is a machine that uses the centrifugal force to its contents. So here we can observe that centrifuge is the main term which is being defined. However, how will the reader understand what centrifuge is if they really don't know what centrifugal means or centrifugal force? So do not remember that you are writing a definition in order for the readers to define, to know what the term means. If you will add terms which they do not know, they will search for more. So you have to use words which will be easy for them to understand the term. Remember that, because your primary aim is to define things for them to know about the term and not to search for more. So good example, a centrifuge is a machine that applies the high rotating container in order to separate different mixed fluids of different densities. So here, centrifugal force is not stated, but the process of the centrifugal force is really explained of what is happening or how centrifuge works. Avoid polysyllabic monstrosities in the amalgamation of lexicographic phraseology. So don't use big words if you can avoid them. They may be fun, but in definition, they tend to confuse people more than help them. So definition is helping the readers for them to really understand what the text is. For example, they came across with a word they didn't know. So they will look in the definition. Therefore, they are finding for clarity. They are finding for clear idea. So we should help them and not to confuse them more. Example, read the example above. So instead of having this with exclamation point, which will affect or which might affect the reader's emotion, because instead of helping them, the feeling of there will be help for them in knowing things, we should help them in the way they can feel that they are really guided. Like this one, avoid using words that have too many airs, make it more simple. Here, in good example, the reader will really understand what they should be or what they should avoid. In bad example, with the example above. However, what if the example is not really clear to them? How they will understand what you are saying. So you should be specific. You should be direct also. So avoid specialized terms. Use mainstream English words in explanation whenever possible. The more widespread a term is, the more users will benefit. Terms with restricted usage may leave a significant fraction of Wiktionary's readership clueless. So avoid jargon, which are highly technical terms, because if they are not really in that field, they will not understand truly the term. So it should be the general definition, general words where they can easily understand, where all will understand, even the beginners, even the people who are not in the same field. So avoid words whose use is restricted to a certain geographic regions, social or ethnic groups, or that might otherwise leave many readers confused. So here it is stated that we should always use words which is true to all, which will be understood by all. Because sometimes in specific region, in specific places, we can, or they are using specific words where there might be a different meaning to other places. So to avoid confusion, we should always use words which will have a uniform meaning to all the readers. So 5, avoid circularity. It's a poor form to define a word with the same words in a definition. Use different terms. So the redundancy, meaning you are always using that words. And sometimes, if they will always see those words, it will give them confusion. So, but always use different but simple terms. So avoid defining a term solely using etymologically or morphologically related terms. Adverbs are especially prone to being defined by the adjective from which they are derived. While it is possible to define words this way, definitions ideally should stand on their own. So it means that after defining a term from its etymology, you can go beyond that, and not only based from only one aspect of the definition. So check the primary words in the definition to see whether any point right back at the term being defined. If two entries are defined solely or primarily as each other, then there will be no basis for a reader to understand either definition. So you should always be direct, meaning you are defining one or a singular subject for them not to be confused with the definitions. Because if you will combine terms and its definitions, then the readers might be confused, might be struggling of what definition really is of a particular term. So you should be clear, because again, our aim is to help them to define and to learn new things, and not for them to struggle with the definitions that we give. So now we will focus to the patterns in making a good definitions of words. So we have 2 patterns. So in defining a term, you actually answer the question, what is a, or the term. Definitions are commonly used in expository writing, such as researches, scientific and legal texts. It is also used in essay and other text types in order to make ideas concepts clearer. Full definitions are composed of a term to define the general class where they belong, then the distinguishing characteristics that make that term really distinct from other words. So we have the pattern number 1. We have the A, B, C. It's very simple. A, it stands for the term that you want to define, that you want to describe. Then, is it in what classification it belongs? Then you can connect that A and B by this is, are, is defined as, refers to, denotes. Then distinguishing characteristic. Under telling what the class is, you will distinguish the characteristic that makes the term, or characteristics that make the term different from other terms of that class. Example, benevolence is the quality of what being. So we have here the benevolence, the main term that we want to define. What is benevolence? It is a class, or it is one of the qualities. Then qualities of what? Of being. So benevolence is the quality of what? Being. Then here, cynicism is believing that people are motivated by self-interest. Cynicism is the main term, therefore it's the letter A here. And what is the class? It is believing that, meaning it is a belief. Then what kind of belief? That people are motivated by self-interest. Synonyms are words that have the same meaning. We have the term here, synonyms. And what is the class? It's under the class of word. Synonyms are words. And what kind of words? With the same meaning. So I hope it is really clear. And pattern 2, we have also the same here. However, it is rearranged. A, B, C. We have it here in pattern 1, A, B, C. It's alphabetical. However, here we have B, C, A. So the characteristic will come first. Second will be the the class will come first, then the second will be the characteristics, and the subject will be, or the term will be, at the end. For example, the quality of what being is benevolence. An idea of belief that people are motivated by self-interest is called cynicism. Words that have the same meaning are called synonyms. So here we can really see same message, but we are having different emphasis, that we are giving emphasis to the quality, to the idea of belief, and to the words, and not to the main term itself. But they are connected to one another. And for what's more, read the following definitions carefully, circle the term defined, box the class, and underline the distinguishing characteristic. Again, circle the term. For example, you will circle the benevolence, then box the class of what being, box that. Then underline the distinguishing characteristic will be, for example, circle synonyms, then the class box the words. Then letter C, or the distinguishing characteristic, will be underlined. Circle, box, underline. Circle, box, underline. Like what we have here. So A, you will encircle letter A, box letter B, and underline letter C. So you have to copy this first before answering on a separate sheet of paper. So for independent assessment 1, show me the pattern. So write a full definition from each given set of terms to define, generalizing the class and distinguishing the characteristics below. Give 2 sentences following the patterns you have learned. Write your answers on a separate sheet of paper. So we have here different terms. We have different terms. Then we have also definition, and you will write your own definition sentence using the pattern 1 and pattern 2, which have in pattern 1 we have ABC, the term, class, distinguishing characteristics using these words. And pattern 2 we have BCA, where the terminology is at the end and the class comes first, followed by the distinguishing characteristics. So in each item you will have 2 definitions, the pattern 1 and pattern 2. Using the Venn diagram, compare and contrast the qualities of freedom and equality. Use the words in the diagram to come up with the definitions of 2 words. Write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. So you can find it also and connect it from what you have read and what's new, which is a part of this module. So here, what freedom has that the equality doesn't have. Here, what equality has that the freedom doesn't have. And here in the middle, you will write what freedom has, which equality has also. So independent assessment 2, mean it to win it. here, look for the meaning to the following words in the dictionary. Write down its literal meaning and paraphrase it in the provided space below. So here, you will just copy it from the dictionary. You will search that, then you will just copy. Then you will paraphrase based on what you have understood from the literal dictionary that you have gotten from the dictionary. You will paraphrase it, meaning you will rewrite the dictionary based on what or how you understood it. Independent activity 3, define me. Go back to the speech I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr. Look for 6 unfamiliar words, alphabetize them, and make definitions of these words by following the guidelines. So here, pattern 1, pattern 2. So find three terms, or 6 in all in all 6 terms that you will find in I Have a Dream, which are not really familiar to you. So you will pick 6 words from I Have a Dream, the text from Martin Luther King Jr. Then find new 6 terms. Then identify its class, distinguishing characteristics. Or here, the class, distinguishing characteristics, and the term. Then for independent assessment number 3, good or not, read the following statements below. Write GD if the statement is an example of good definition, and NGD if it is not. So you will base it, it's either pattern 1 or pattern 2. As long as it followed the pattern, it will be a good statement or good definition. However, if the item is not following any of the patterns that we have discussed a while ago, then you will write NGD. What I have learned that using correct grammar in definitions, what do you think is the pattern? You can explain it here. Then I want others to realize that the correct usage of grammar in making definition is essential, because why is it important for us to use the patterns? How significant, what benefit that we can have. Write sentences to define the words listed below. Use any of the 2 patterns on a separate sheet of paper. So you will just define them by, it's either pattern 1 or pattern 2, as long as you will have to follow each or one of the patterns that we have discussed. Then assessment, put check mark if the statement is one of the guidelines on how to write complete definition, then X if it's not. So based on what we have discussed, you will identify if it is true or not by putting check mark or and cross mark. So for additional activity, using your own word, define freedom, equality, and interdependence, and explain how it will be beneficial to all people. Use 15 sentences only for this essay. So you will also use pattern 1 or pattern 2 depending on you. So for me, or for us to clearly and easily identify the patterns that you have used, kindly underline the pattern 1, the sentences which use pattern 1, then box the sentences which use the pattern 2. So we have rubrics. So creativity and usage of patterns in defining words. So if you use correctly the pattern, then you will get 5 points. Then usage of proper definition of words. If you use clear, simple, avoid jargons, then you will get 5 points. Grammar and sentence structure. If you observe meticulously the sentence structure, punctuation also, then you will get 5 points. So if you still have questions, you are free to message your English teacher. So observing correct grammar in making definitions, we are helping one another, especially our younger and the beginner. And if we will help them, we also came from that situation. So we should always have a helping hands for them to grow and to learn more. So goodbye and